Well, the pipeline issue is funneling its way back onto the front pages. On Friday, the National Energy Board came down with a key decision, concluding that it is in the public interest to build the Trans Mountain expansion despite real environmental risks. So they put 60 new conditions on top of the over 150 they already imposed. Now the question is, the government has 90 days to make their decision to greenlight this. But for Alberta, where Premier Rachel Notley has just announced $3.7 billion oil by rail strategy, a promise to lease 4,400 rail cars to transport oil, is this pipeline too little too late? Well, let's find out. Joining me now is the Premier of Alberta, Rachel Notley. Welcome to the program, Premier Notley. Well, the National Energy Board had said it is in the public interest, the national interest, to build the pipeline, but there are still genuine environmental risks. They've got obviously 16 new recommendations. What does this tell you? What message does this send to the government?
Well, I mean, I think it's good news. I think we think that the additional recommendations are sound, that they can be met, that they'll improve safety along the West Coast, which I think all Canadians want to see. So that's fine. But at the same time, that they're not going to serve as a barrier to moving forward with this fundamentally important economic initiative for all Canadians.
Yeah, but Premier, here's what I expect is going to happen. The Cabinet now has got 90 days to decide if they're going to greenlight it. In the meantime, we suspect there will be more legal challenges to this, and British Columbia has not altered its position. The NEB's recommendations have not changed Premier Horgan's view on this. Do you believe that there will be more delays in the construction of this pipeline?
Well, what I will say is that I think that if the federal government issues the certificate, then the position is that construction begins. And yes, there may be additional legal challenges, but those take a while to wind their way through the courts. In addition, what we've got right now is a path that has been endorsed by the Federal Court of Appeal. And assuming that the federal government does their job right in terms of consultation and accommodation in a meaningful way with the Indigenous communities who are affected, and assuming that they meet the conditions that were put in place, none of which stand to be barriers, all of which make good common sense, then we're following the path that the Federal Court of Appeal has essentially laid out. So I think that our case gets stronger as we go. And as a result of the federal government buying the pipeline, quite frankly, the ability of the government of BC to have much impact on where this goes is significantly reduced. Their impact was always about sort of making investors nervous, but now that the federal government owns it and national support for the pipeline has grown, their ability to use that tool is significantly impeded.
When do you think the earliest possible date is to get shovels in the ground if the Cabinet approves it?
I don't know what the earliest possible date is because at the end of the day, it will be driven by the consultation and the accommodation itself, which will be, reprofiled a little bit as a result of the additional changes and conditions that came out today. But I don't think it's unreasonable at all to look at the fall in a cautiously optimistic way as a time when we can see shovels back in the ground.
All right, last question for you, Premier. I just wonder do you get the sense that the sands have shifted and you're on the wrong side of maybe Albertans? You've got Jason Kenney, Doug Ford, Premier Moe in Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, all opposed to the government's carbon tax. You supported it. You've got a convoy called United We Roll coming to Ottawa to talk about pipelines and the carbon tax. You've got people putting up billboards saying we want to leave Canada in Alberta. Are you sensing that Albertans have turned on the federal government over carbon, over pipelines, and that you've maybe attached yourself too closely to Justin Trudeau and you may get burned by that?
Well, I don't know that I've necessarily attached myself to any particular government or any particular stripe of federal government. What I've done is I've focused on making the right decisions for Albertans from day one. We brought in a climate leadership plan before, or we started working on it, and we introduced it about a week after Justin Trudeau was elected. So quite frankly, it had very little to do with the federal Liberals. What it had to do with was our campaign promise to help reposition Alberta Alberta's energy industry as the most sustainable and responsible producer, and to also make the right decisions for generations to come. As far as making progress on the pipeline, that's exactly what we've been focused on doing. And what I will say as well is that we have done this with a view to building Canada, not dividing it. And I think that the vast majority of Albertans agree with that. And so when it comes to that issue, I'm quite happy to run on that matter.
All right, thanks, Premier Notley. Got to leave it there.